Hi everyone, it's Kelly from Kelly's Bead Boutique. So today I'm going to teach you how to take some wire and do a herringbone weave. I love this technique. It's really unique. We're going to use it as a link. We're going to create a lovely pendant with it, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So if you want to learn how, come and join me. All right, so let's get started making our herringbone pendant. So I have one of Tierra Cast's gorgeous long leaves, or is that a feather? I don't know, whatever you want it to be, that's what it can be. I've got one of these. You can see they're actually quite large, but I love them. And I'm gonna have these available in a few different colors. I also have a 12-inch piece of 1mm leather that we're gonna use for embellishment. I have a gorgeous juicy piece of aquamarine, and I think this is about a 10mm. I have one of our barrel knot tubes, because you know, I have to make barrel knots. I have some 20 gauge craft wire. And then as far as tools, I'm going to be using a pair of bent chain nose pliers, some round nose pliers. I've got a pair of cutters, and I also have a pair of wire straighteners. We may need those. So let's get started. Okay, so I have about 24 inches of wire, and I've just straightened out the top part here. And then I'm going to make a sharp bend about 6 inches down. So I'm just going to place my wire in and give it a bend away. And then I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers, and I want to go up and over and down, rotate my plier and pull that wire to the back. And now I want to make sure that that's nice and lined up so you can see that it looks a bit like a lollipop or a stop sign. Now, to make your herringbone, you have to make a decision before you start. Do you want to have 3 wraps around your bead, or do you want to have 4 wraps around your bead? I want a little bit beefier look, so I'm going to do 4 wraps around my bead. So if I'm going to do 4 wraps around my bead, I actually have to do 8 wraps around my wire right now. So I'm going to start with 8 today. So I'm going to go once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And you can see I've got them all lined up next door to each other, and it's nice and neat. Now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to come in with the flush side of my cutters, and I'm going to give that a little trim. So now I want to come in and just kind of tuck that burr down. It's going to be covered, but I still don't want to scratch myself when I'm making this piece. So I'm just going to give that a little push down. All right, so now I'm going to kind of straighten that out, and I'm going to place my bead on that wire. So the kit that I'm going to have is going to have this gorgeous aquamarine. I think it's from Zambia. It's beautiful, but you can use any kind of stone that you want. Okay, so now I want to make sure that these loops are going the same direction. So I'm going to have to try and make that amount of length up here. So what I do is I take my pliers and I place them across my little loops there. So you can see if I did it like this, that's not covering all the loops. So I go until I've got all of the loops covered, and then I kind of visually mark it. You could use a Sharpie if you want on your tools, but I'm pretty good at marking it, so I know that I want to have my tool placed on the other side approximately here, and that will give me about the same length. So I kind of take an eyeball and then I place it over top here, and that looks like it should be about the right place. So now I'm going to just pivot it so that it's going the right direction, and I'm going to bend away just like I did at the beginning. But now you can see I have this large neck here, and that's what we're going to use to create the rest of this. So I'm going to go back to the same place because I want to have my loops the same size. I'm going to go up and over and down, rotate my plier, and then pull this to the back. So it's a lot of wire, and it's getting caught in my mic. Okay, that was caught in my mic. So now I want to make sure that that looks nice and neat. And before I finish, I'm going to pop that into my little pendant here. I don't want to have a whole pile of jump rings and things like that. So I'm going to add that now, and then I'll just wrap that in. So we're not even going to worry about that being there. Okay, so now let me get us some of the tools so you can see what I'm doing here. So now I'm going to complete my wraps, and now I want to do 8 wraps just like I did at the beginning. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now I'm really careful when I'm using this wire that I'm not damaging that wire. I do have a pair of these straighteners if I did damage the wire, but I got pretty lucky. I was very careful with it. You don't want to end up with all kinds of kinks because that will show in your piece. So now you can see that I'm just going to move all these tools so that you can see what I'm doing here now. So now you can see that I've got 8 wraps here and 8 wraps here, and I've got my wire coming up on the top, and you can see it's about to look like it's going to go around the bead, and that's exactly what we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sort of forming this around. Now I have picked a very heavy gauge wire because I want a bit of a beefy look, but you could practice this to start off with maybe like a 24 gauge or something like that, something that's going to be a little easier on your hands, because this is a little hard to do because it is very heavy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this around the bead, so I sort of lock it in there like that. Now I'm going to go around the outside and completely over one time, so I'm wrapping right around, so I went right around, and you can see how that forms there. So now I turn it around and I sort of take my fingers and start to mold it, and I mold it around the bead, and I'm going nice and slow, mold it around the bead, and now I'm going to bring it on the other side of this first wrap here. So I'm going to go right there, and just don't worry about that pendant, just leave it out of the way. And again, I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm being very careful that I'm not kinking up my wire. All right, so now you can see that we've got our first wrap, and look how beautiful that looks already. So now I'm going to continue with my second wrap. So I'm going to mold that around a little bit. Now I want to bring it underneath this first wrap here. So I mold it underneath that first one there, and I'm going to bring it on the outside, always on the outside of that wrap, go completely around one time, and then pull it over to the other side. Now I always just kind of take my fingers and give it a little bit of a head start. Now you're always going to go underneath your next, the wrap that you just did. So I'm going to go underneath that one, and I'm sort of mindfully placing it where I want it to go. And again, because this is heavy gauge wire, it does have a bit of a mind of its own. So you want to sort of really be careful about how you pull it around. So go over top and completely around. There we go. And I'm going to go for my third one. So that one's got a little tiny bit of a kink. I could take my straighteners and kind of pull through a little bit, just a bit, because every time you use your straightener, it does make your wire a little bit harder, so I don't want to do it too aggressively. Okay, so now I'm going to go underneath that last one that I did there. And you can see I'm just sort of molding it with my fingers. Go around, all the way around, and always make sure you're going away from you. And I'm going to come back in for the third one here, and over and around. So you can see I've got 3 on one side and 3 on the other, so I want to do one more wrap. Now you could stop there if you wanted, but I did my 8 wraps, or my, when you split it in 2, it's 4, so I've got room to do more. So I'm going to mold it around, go all the way around. And if you take your time with this heavy gauge wire, it does look really, really nice. And again, I've got just a little tiny bit of a kink there. It's not really too much, but even small kinks will show in this. So I like to just sort of pull that out a bit. Now you can see I've got 4 on one side and 3 on the other, so I know that I still have to finish this last one. So I go underneath that last one there that I did. I go over top. And I'm going to go one more time around just to kind of lock it in, and it kind of gives it a finished look. So I'm just bringing it to the back, taking my flush cutters, and always making sure to cut with the flush side. And there's a little tiny burr there, but I want to be careful that I don't damage anything, so I'm going to very gently just sort of tuck that down. And then I go back and I feel it with my finger. And if I can feel anything, then I just sort of work it again. There, that feels pretty good. Okay, so there you go. Now you can see that we've got our beautiful herringbone piece on there. Now I'm using this as a link, so I am going to further embellish this piece, but you could leave it just like that, and look how gorgeous that is. It's such a unique way of finishing a bead, just adding that extra little bit of embellishment. And on the back side, if you've been really careful, it will look just as pretty as the front. I mean, you can obviously tell that there is a back and a front, but I take really good care when I make them so that they end up really nice. Okay, so now let's make our little leather embellishment. So I'm just going to take my piece of leather and pop it through. I'm going to go to the halfway point, and then I'm going to pull it off just a little bit, just sort of offset it because I want one side a little bit longer than the other. So now I'm going to take my little tube and I'm going to place it at the top, and I'm just going to go around 3 times. So working towards me, I'm going to go once, twice, 3 times, and then I'm going to take that tail and put it in the end. And then I'm going to pull that tight. Before I pull it tight, I want to decide where I want it, so I sort of jockey it into position. And then I'm going to pull that nice and snug. There we go. Okay, so now you can decide what you want to do. You can just leave it dangling if you want, kind of a long look, or you can add a couple little knots at the end. So maybe about here, I will take my tube and I'll place it right here, and I'm just going to go once, twice, just do a little tiny knot, put it through the end. Not spending as much time on the barrel knots from this project because you've seen me do them a million times. Did you guys hear that beeping from next door? I think I'm going crazy today. All right, so that one's a little low, so I'm going to adjust it up because I want a little bit higher. Yeah, that's better. So you see, if I don't tighten it up, then I can adjust where I want it. So now I just have to make that look a little nicer. Okay, so that one's good. And then I can have one a little bit shorter if I want. So I think I want one up here. And then go through the back. And before I tighten it, yeah, that looks about where I want it. Just going to pull that down a tiny bit. And then I want to pull these nice and snug. Now you could put a little bit of glue on these if you wanted to make sure that they were staying where you wanted them to, but it doesn't really matter. So now I'm just going to trim these off. And I'm going to start off with trimming them the same, and I think that looks good. So there we go. There we have our completed pendant, and I just added a little bit of leather just to give it a bit of an extra embellishment. Now I'm not going to make a whole piece. I just wanted to make the pendant, and that's what we're going to have in kit form. So you'll have your choice of colors. I will give you the same color wire. It'll all be the beautiful piece of Zambian aquamarine, and then you'll get your choice of color of leather too. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to do the herringbone wire wrap. It's one of my favorite techniques. It really is a beautiful look. It can take a little bit of practice. You just kind of have to go super slow around there and just take your time with it, and you know, practice, practice, practice. That's what I tell everybody, because everybody says, well, you make this look so easy, but I've been doing it a long time, so that's why it does. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do. Please make sure to give me a like if you enjoyed this video, and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from everybody. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. So I love playing with leather, but I also love to play with wire. That sounds really naughty, doesn't it? Oh my God, if I only knew what I wanted to say.